r/ask Reddit. What are some declassified government documents that are surprisingly terrifying? Project Sunshine, where the US government bought remains of dead infants to test for radiation. When they took limbs from them, the parents were never told. One mother wasn't allowed to dress her daughter for her funeral because doctors had removed her legs and didn't want her to find out. Is anyone else ridiculously disturbed that they named that Project Sunshine? What the duck? The German radar guidance system Wotan was a great example on why your project operation names should have nothing to do with their content. Jeffrey Dahmer's full confession, a couple of 100 pages of pure madness, necrophilia, dismemberment, skinning, lobotomy, body part preservation, cannibalism. Dahmer became pretty close to his interrogating detectives, Dennis Murphy and Patrick Kennedy, and provided a lot of detail to them. A lot of it in a pretty candid, offhand manner. Dahmer should have been prosecuted for what he did in the army. Source: for capture began the day he and Dahmer, an army medic, were put into a room together. The assaults began at once and, eventually, he leapt from the third floor window to escape. I had probably been raped 8 to 10 times. I don't know. He was tying me to the bunk with motor pool rope. He took all my clothing from me. He would either beat me before he raped me or he would beat me after. Jesus ducking Christ. How does that go unpunished? Probably the same way that sexual assaults go unpunished in the military, even though it's pushing 20% in the Marines. Confessions of serial killers, especially in prison, are notoriously untrustworthy. They take identity from boasting about their crimes even though it may not seem like boasting. That being said, some of Dahmer's confessions are right on the money. All I'm saying is take it with some grains of salt. One US bomber accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb a short distance from a major US city, can't remember which, but luckily it didn't detonate. Off the coast of Georgia. They still haven't found it. No, they know exactly where it is. It would just be more dangerous to retrieve it than to just leave it alone. It's off the coast of Savannah. Fallout 5 in Savannah confirmed? Let's start it. There are over 50 mishaps with nuclear weapons by the US Air Force in the 1950s alone. In East Germany, a committed freedom fighter and her husband had dealt with having her home raided while she was away, being arrested on the way to protests and all sorts of state-sponsored harassment. After the wall fell, she was able to read the documents the Stasi had kept on her and found out her own husband was an undercover agent and had written many reports on her activities with a bloodless banality. Suspiciously, she always has a headache when I propose having sex. Possible capitalist plot. She's always volunteering to take the children to school on Mondays. Possibility of capitalist indoctrination of our children. Must interrogate them later. Operation Northwoods. A plan for a false flag operation that came from the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Department of Defense in 1962 and given to JFK, who turned it down. The plan called for the CIA to commit terrorist actions against US civilians across the United States and frame Cuba, allowing us the right to invade and oppose Castro and the communist government there. It was declassified and can be found online at the JFK library. Terrifying that no one knows or seems to care that this was suggested by our governments to the president. My high school English teacher mandated that I read this. I didn't understand it at the time, but he was responding to my question I posed him. As an airborne vet, why do you seem so jaded in regards to US history and politics? Still one of my favorite teachers to this day. He and I were able to go into a lot other Ost things the US has done. So it's completely feasible that 9/11 was a false flag operation. When people suggest the US did 9/11, I try to remind them that false flags can be simply letting a known plan happen without stopping it. CIA invested millions in trying to make cat spies. $20 million to be precise. I don't know. The way my friend's cat is staring at me right now, maybe they succeeded. Know why it didn't work? Test number 1. Their very first spigot ever ran into the street and was hit by a car. They decided to not continue. Bro, that's what they want you to think. Everyone knows cats have 9 lives. He faked his own death and is now in deep with his next assignment. It was the perfect plan. When the Space Shuttle Challenger was destroyed, It was reported that all 7 astronauts were killed instantly. It was revealed decades later that some, if not all of the astronauts survived the initial explosion, as the cockpit cabin had enough protection to not be breached. For 2 minutes and 45 seconds, they were awake and aware, as they plummeted toward the Atlantic Ocean. Understandably, NASA knew that the news of their terrifying death would have crippled the space program even more than it already was. We looked at this in flight school and pretty much, there's evidence to support that the crew was still running their procedures even after it was obvious shit hit the fan. They didn't die accepting their fate. They died astronauts. That's something to be admired, Mo. The same happened with Columbia. The crew were working the systems to try to troubleshoot and recover even as the space shuttle was burning up and breaking apart around them. The crew cabin was the last piece to break apart. New Zealand's UFO files are a bit creepy. I was in the library and stumbled across the bound files. There's a lot of assumed crazy people being crazy, but there's also one specific one that stood out from respectable Air Force pilots who were both in the air, conducted mini tests, for example, blinking, moving the plane in relation to the object, verifying what he saw with the co-pilot to ensure it wasn't an illusion or his mind. I don't know, just the fact that you'd assume he wasn't crazy creeps me out so much. NZ is not real. Yeah, it's just a prop island for the Lord of the Rings movies. MK Ultra, partially illegal, forced mind control experiments utilizing psychoactive drugs, conducted by the CIA in 1950s-60s. Possibly created the Unabomber. Ken Kesey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, participated in these tests in the 1960s. I believe though his participation was voluntary. Canadian here. The Somalia affair, not sure if it was ever classified, but definitely a horrific scandal. A now disbanded division of the Canadian military torturing a kid to death in the 90s and taking hero pics with him while doing it. I think it's important to remember when your country does something shitty, it's not always the bad guys who can be ducking evil. Not declassified but leaked. Operation Yellowhammer. The government tried to say it was old, but it had an August date on it. And now you said it here. They're coming for you. Run. Boeing X-37B unmanned space shuttle. It just spent 720 days in space doing God knows what. Devil Eyes. The plan after 9/11 to make figurines that look like Osama bin Laden and give them to kids in South Asia. After it's left in the sun for a certain amount of time, its face would peel off to reveal a demon-like visage with red skin, green eyes, and black markings. Basically a demon. The objective was to scare kids and their parents so bin Laden and Al-Qaeda would lose support. You should watch The Holy Mountain. In it they talk about knowing they will have to go to war with a country in 15 years. They make comic books and toys with a villain that looks like that other race. They also make ipecac type medicine the same color as the skin of that race. All sorts of things to prepare kids to hate a particular races by the time they are of military age and the war is fought. I don't think it's classified, but Project Thor, using a satellite bomber to bomb a city. Imagine a missile or a bomb coming from space, and before you know it, your city is destroyed by a falling missile bomb. It was called Rods from God. Basically it would have used kinetic energy, no explosives. It would have used a series of 2,000 pounds tungsten rods to destroy and vaporize without the radiation of a nuclear bomb. It was only avoided because we signed treaties with the Russians not to weaponize space. This isn't really a classified document, but at one point the US government was telling people to build your own bomb shelter to protect your family. And it showed how to dig a 8 foot by 4 foot by 10 foot hole in your backyard, and if there is a nuclear threat, to get your family and go in there and cover it with a door. So obviously that wouldn't really protect anyone in the case of a nuclear attack. Later it came out that the purpose of telling families to do that was so if there was a nuclear attack on American soil, they wouldn't have to bury as many bodies because the families dug their own grave. So yeah, not classified, but along the same disturbing stuff the US government did. The MK Ultra mind control experiments. The CIA basically tested various means of mind suggestibility control through many front organizations. The main intent was to improve interrogation methods, but later expanded into other avenues of research such as making sleeper agents. Tests were performed both with and without knowledge or permission on large numbers of American and Canadian citizens. While some files have been declassified or leaked, the bulk of the files have either been destroyed or remain classified. As a result, larger statistics on the project, such as death tolls, numbers of subjects and personnel involved and research gained, can only be estimated as of today. Not really terrifying but ducked up. Operation Paperclip, where after World War II the US government took Nazi scientists and shipped them to America to do science. Some of them came straight from Nuremberg cells, the most noteworthy being Werner von Braun. Von Braun built the V-2 rockets with Jewish slave labor. Every day they would execute the 5 slowest workers in front of the other workers to incentive them to work harder. Once he came to America, we shipped him to Huntsville, Alabama, where he built the Saturn V, the rocket used in the Apollo program, and got us to the moon. I remember something about a heart attack gun I read some time ago. Basically a poison gun that once shot is untraceable in the victim's body and leaves no mark on their body. Sorry if it sounds RLY vague. Right now there's a radioactive pile of trash in St. Louis and the surrounding rivers, which got infected with all the rain washing away the radioactive trash into the rivers. Gave cancer to many people since the 1950s. Operation Northwoods. Operation Mockingbird, Operation Northwoods, Operation Paperclip, the fact that we pardoned Unit 731, the list goes on and on. Read the book, 1 Second After. It's about what happens after an AMP attack on the US. It's based on actual government studies and estimates. It is terrifying. Damn America, you guys are ducked up. Came here hoping to find some secret MI7 activity in England. Left here realizing I'm never visiting America. Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.